Thanks very much, Adam. Hi, everybody. There's going to be a bit of sort of between screen cursor moving, so sorry if this sounds all slow. But yeah, I guess we get stuck in. This is the at sign. I'm going to refer to the at sign a lot. I'm sorry if it sounds real repetitive, but when I refer to the at sign, I'm going to say the at sign. Because it's called different things in different languages. The at sign is everywhere. Emails, social media handles, shop signs, packaging, keyboards, icons, album covers, and more. Despite this ubiquity, it remains a uniquely challenging letterform. It's difficult to design, it sticks out aesthetically, it's used improperly. Significantly also, in some situations, it's incredibly hard to find. The at sign creates a difficulty, which I think is what I'm interested in. Why do we react strongly to it? Why is it everywhere? And why has it disappeared? That blend of handwritten and digital might tell us about the history of typography, why we care about it, and what our intense reactions towards it. Trying to understand this difficulty can prove important. What is the power of difficulty? What reactions and prejudices inform this thinking? And can or should we make the symbol less difficult? Thinking about this difficulty through the at sign might allow us to think about difficulty in typography more generally. If we assume that typography is an essential form of written communication, then how might letters getting lost, letters getting found, letters being awkward, letters being divisive, and letters being successful feel? Some broader questions to consider, but I'm going to ask a lot of questions. So, I hope you're provoked. Some broader questions to consider might also arise in the process of attempting to work through that difficulty. Is it good for typography to be invisible? Can typography even be defined as inaccessible? Questions like this might help us create a framework to think through typography in the public imagination more broadly. Ubiquitous yet invisible is the at sign a victim of its own success. Let's start with losing at. This investigation found its genesis because I'm currently a graphic designer and formerly a student of English. I use type. Interested in what I had recognized as dissonance within the sign, I began to take notes on my computer. In Notion, the note-taking platform I use, when I type the at sign, it disappears. So where that sort of search magnifying glasses was an at. Shortcuts attempt instead to direct me towards mentions, people, and over 43 other destinations. At is replaced by an icon of my phone. So I decided to look it up on Google. Typing in the at sign to the search bar returns results for the Wikipedia page about the at sign and its meaning in history and encyclopedias and dictionaries. A more peculiar turn of events occurs when you type in at sign or at symbol, and the disappearing at continues. Completely ignoring the at sign that prefaces the word sign or symbol, the search engine comes up with the results for the word sign itself. There's an example of symbol. In symbol here, we see at least the intimation of the at sign poking through. But in these situations, the absence of search results for the at sign might be explained by its erstwhile use as a function for tagging or drawing attention to other things. In Google Docs, that's a screenshot of this script, so hopefully I didn't say things that I then deleted. Typing the at symbol brings up a search menu UI, which prompts a list of shortcuts ranging from tagging a collaborator and adding in special functions like a date or a dropdown. Upon selection on one of these options, the at sign itself disappears. Its function has been completed, it's serviced you on your way to speedier productivity, and it slides out the door. The Google Maps search bar returns, Google Maps can't find at, which I think is kind of funny, because isn't that exclusively what Google Maps is meant to do, find where things are at? Difficulty in finding it, especially in the online circumstance, is compounded by the fact that the at sign is described in English as the at sign. I told you I'd say it a lot, sorry, I'm tired of reading. This unusually undistinctive name differs from the descriptors used by most other languages in Europe and around the world, which translate to words as far-ranging as monkey's tail, snail, trunk A, the meow or curled up cat, small duck, animal ears, pig's ear, rolled herring, strudel. There is a further irony to these examples. The at sign's ubiquity, fueled by its use across email and social media, is often taken as shorthand for communication and connection. Here, though, the symbol that connects name and domain, that locates our personal user profiles on platforms, is nowhere to be seen. In 2021, user Les Suarez came to the online Microsoft community with a problem. I can't type the at symbol. This is incredible. If I move the laptop mouse to the desktop monitor and then I press the at key in my laptop, the symbol is correctly displayed in the desktop. But, they write in all caps, if I do the same for my desktop, the cursor icon jumps from my laptop screen to the desktop monitor and the at symbol is not displayed. That's the end. Right. 10 replies later, and with the help of an independent Microsoft software advisor, the problem was solved. The @ symbol was found. A plugin the user was running, Mouse Without Borders, which facilitates the user's 4-monitor desktop setup, was interfering. I think I find the panic in the initial request fascinating, though. What would Le Suarez have done if they couldn't find the @ symbol? It's become such a ubiquitous presence that its disappearance is threatening. I think I'm thinking here of, like, when you type in emojis and symbols and you grab a thing that you can't find on your keyboard. It's a challenging thing if you're trying to type quickly or you're trying to write about things. The question of where we find and lose the @ symbol on our keyboards is an interesting one. An investigation into where it sits on different language keyboards across the world could produce a whole paper in and of itself. Differences appear to arise, though, from a gap in linguistic needs. In German, for example, there are more key options for letters with diacritical marks, and so @ slips down the pecking order. It's accessed by using the alternate graphic key rather than the shift key, specific to only one of the 2 hotkeys. This alternate graphic key is the 3rd level then of designation. To narrow our focus, though, the difference between keyboards typing in the English language is a good start. The US International Keyboard has @ as the shift key for the 2 num key up there, while the UK keyboard relegates @ to the right-hand side, accessed via the apostrophes shift function. The UK Apple keyboard takes more inspiration from the US ASCII keyboard layout, which has @ sit proudly by that too. I like to imagine a frequent user of both keyboards getting confused when flitting between, perhaps even a quick moment of annoyance. Where has @ gone? All this talking about losing @ makes it suddenly seem quite real, quite physical. The pain of its loss is all the greater. I spoke to typographer and custodian of the typography workshop, Theo Hersey, to ask him about what the @ symbols he has in his. He noted that the @ symbol in the typography workshop is few and far between. When letterpress existed up until the mid-1980s as a standard form of communication, it wasn't a standard punctuation mark that would come designed as part of a full font of type. The @ symbol in type began its life as a standalone extra grammatical mark outside of the reference marks, which we like paragraph marks, level daggers, meaning it had to be cast to order as a specific standalone sort. Theo goes on to point out that because these characters are not relative punctuation marks extracted from the font, the way the symbol was used in design was much more restricted. This image is taken from the 1969 Stevenson Blake Foundry specimen. We zoom in. The @ sign is listed in the back under miscellaneous commercial signs, and there are only 2 set styles here. So the first style you can see ranges from 6 to 48 point, and then a Roman one there from 5 to 18 point. Nowadays, the @ symbol is more stylized because each and every one is individually designed. It's become a massive part of type vocabulary, but 50 years ago, in Theo's workshop at least, it was few and far between. This physicality might make us think about how @ doesn't fit in other ways. In the thorough and accessible handbook Designing Type by Karen Cheng, she's a professor of visual communication at the University of Washington, she explains that because of its density, the @ is difficult to design, especially in bold or condensed fonts. She suggests practical solutions, lighter stroke weights, use for narrow italic A, or drawing @ large. Here you can see 3 of the ats in Theo's collection. The set style system has great ramifications. If you're typesetting an email address, for example, for a client in Futura Bold, you're going to use one of these standard bits of type because the symbol doesn't exist in your font. This also has the effect of creating an aesthetic difference in the 2 pieces of type, a kind of dissonance across the model. I think more broadly, this disappearance act fits neatly into the maxim spelled by author and designer David Jury, which I found somewhat incidentally in issue 59 of Typographic in a tray of free ephemera at St. Bride's Library in London. Jury writes, typography saturates every aspect of society. It is ubiquitous and simultaneously often discreet to the point of anonymity. Is the @ sign's disappearance the most real manifestation of this charmingly coy behaviour, discretion? Mark Smith, who is Professor of Paleology at the École Nationale des Chartes in Paris. I wrote that and I thought I was going to do if I say Paris, honestly. I can't even speak French. It's the king of the history of the @ sign. Here's a slide from his recent talk given at the Herb Lebellin lecture series for Typeback Tuba, that illustrates some of the variations in @ signs over the years. It's a really, really good talk. I would recommend anybody to watch it. You can find it on YouTube. His research into the stories and the sign take us on a journey from old worlds right up to the digital age, from handwriting to metal type, from 1536 to the present day. One of his main theories about the contested origins of @ focuses on a sign evolving from a handwriting flourish that began life as an accent over the A. The sign's flourish turns into an anti-clockwise circle surrounding the A from top to bottom, and a kind of ergonomic way to finish that as a flourish. Smith's research establishes that the famous emergence of the @ sign in the 1500s was a technologically driven occurrence. With a broad nib pen, moving in the anti-clockwise direction is impossible without splattering ink. So cutting the quill in a new way, this advancement in technology, and holding it differently in the 14th century allows this symbol to quite literally flourish in a new way. The restrictions on its stylistic flair continued through from metal type into early graphic design, where it remained a dingbat, so only one possible shape and font. You can see how the similarity between that and Theo's set styles. Of course, that's now changed as we individually design it, and in the same way as physical type, it's now individually coded. So for the second part, I hope it gives time. Actually, maybe I'm absolutely rushing through this. Sorry if I'm speaking real fast. We might think about how we find, if we thought previously about how ant is lost, how it disappears, you might start to think about finding the symbol. If the @ sign is lost, then what I'd like to undertake now is an imaginative exercise in attempting to find it. Where are the places that we see the sign? Where does it stand out? Where does it not actually disappear into the background? Where is it kind of choose? To return to Mark Smith's research, the paleographer in Pappy, we might think a little more about the flourish he posits as a key anatomical part of its use and creation. Flourish being the outside bit, the A obviously is in the inside. In some thinking, this would have been purely decorative, a handwritten initial that curls around the first letter of a word. For various reasons, leading the I, the silhouette of the letter, the flourish was created around the initial letter of the word. Crucially, though, there is simply space around it. That's the reason why you'd be able to do it, because there's space around it. You're not within other lines of text. It's used to locate things, to draw the eye, and Paul was speaking about that this morning. Places them in space. In other words, it helps us to find things. This obviously shares a common meaning with the predominant digital use of the sign to locate things in space, and tagging a phone. Physically, there's something tantalizing about the open circle of the @ sign, though. It's not closed, it's not over, it's an offering, and it's open. The curb @ understudy might be a familiar sight to any of us who visited London's South Bank during the summer months. So it's a National Theatre's like food vendor. Though the restaurant @ pub is a familiar typology, we know like something @ something, we might consider the branding exercise of this particular venue. What is the benefit of replacing the word @ with the symbol @? It locates a thing firmly in the observable dimension, space. If we consider its place in time, there is, however, a transience, a temporality. It might not be here forever, but it is now. The relationship between what I'm going to call here in quite like stark terms, now that I read it back, the parasite, something movable and impermanent, and the host, the unmoving stratum. We might consider what would happen if the curb @ understudy moved from the understudy to another place. Would a market vendor with another name occupy the same space once held by curb and reside at the understudy? Or would the relationship between the two entities change? What would happen if another market didn't take the space offered up by the understudy? Would it return to its former function, and would the @ disappear, lost forever in between the two things it once held together? For the moment, though, it holds strong. I'd like to also consider imaginatively what happens when the strata changes, when that host changes. The base layer on which we rely moves. Pubs that host comedy nights, and then the pubs themselves are suddenly the institutions that go before the comedy night. There is an interesting nugget in the middle of that relationship, I think. What can we learn from how relationships between things connected by the @ sign exist? It is a successful relationship, to use the phrase at the beginning of this, one that relies on this kind of transience, like shifting impermanence, or could it point to a model framework of the future? If there is a proliferance of things at other things, but less things within, with, beside, or for, how do we interpret that current distribution? James Moseley, who the former librarian of the St. Bride Library in London, rails against the confused, often badly informed, and sometimes chauvinistic sources of information that frustrated my own attempts to understand where this symbol came from and what it has meant. Here, he is referring to his desire for properly ratified sources that trace the history of the @ symbol in written and printed artifacts. The difficulty he refers to arises because so-called enthusiastic amateurs entered the discussion, attempting to add their own 2 cents to the debate about the sign's origin. His major contention, beyond armchair critics, is the repeated reference to Professor Giorgio Stabile's contribution to the matter. Stabile in 2000 was supposed to have discovered an early use of the @ sign, that in fact he borrowed from a discovery that Federico Melis, who decades earlier in 1972, had found illustrated in some papers from 1536. That's an interesting topic in and of itself, but I think what I'm more focused on is the contention itself at the center of that tale. Moseley writes in quite emphatic terms, and he describes this online mania, everyone in the round to begin to contribute their own opinions to the debate, and crucially, to try and find this stalled debate. There are some places, however, where the @ sign is much easier to find. Hopping up overnight in the corner of our screen worldwide, the @ symbol now announces itself as the logo for Instagram's rival platform to X, Threads. Don't know why I kept the followers in there, but that's the amount of followers in there. Hovering sinisterly in the corner of our screens, as if there weren't enough ats on social media already, we have this peculiarly designed symbol. Design-wise, rather than using a single story A, the choice has been made to swap in a double story A, which allows for a seemingly ergonomic flourish, emitting itself uniquely from the middle as a character there. This, of course, uncouples the symbol from the presupposed origin that Mark Smith writes about. This flourish is no longer akin to the exaggerated accent of old. It's morphed into a completely new beast. I'm not a user of Twitter or Threads, but I understand that the function of the @ symbol in these platforms is to, number 1, label a user with an existing account, and 2, to refer to another user within a post. These 2 functions have various usages, but together they create an environment awash with messages and posts that without the @ would join the approximately 200 million tweets fired out every day. It is a move to grasp onto something within an increasingly structureless and boundless space. Every day there seems to be another sad story about online hate. Does the @ symbol enable this behavior? There are, of course, restrictions in play that will prevent a user from tagging another, but perhaps this is a dichotomy inherent to social media itself. We'd have to go a long way to prove this was the fault or the effect of the @ symbol. It's just a tool being used. But it might allow us to think about wider issues more incisively. I don't know the answer to this common question, but I'll ask it anyway. Is typography something that can tell us about things in the world, but in and of itself cannot actually change things? What we might be able to suppose is how constant tagging, constant vying for others' attention could devalue information when there is so much of it. I think my friends who code would hate me if I said this. And so maybe there is more information is better. And it's not as simple as thinking that just because there's more of something, that the value of its individual instances are less important. We do have limited attention spans, though. And so if we point to more things, shout about more things, each matter commands less of attention. Maybe that's too great a comparison to seek this relationship in the real world. And maybe it's dangerous mode as things. But maybe you could suggest that the more we shout, the more we scream, the less we're heard. Surely that shouldn't mean that we tell people to stop doing that thing. But you can't deny the individual experiences of those who need attention. Just because to see this comparison to its conclusion, we've seen too much of the apparatus they're using to scream. I contacted the band this is a screenshot of their Spotify page, to ask them a few questions about semantics and practicalities of choosing a moniker that uses a character we know is hard to find. Their responses reveal that same slipperiness and difficulty I think I'm interested in. They once described the symbol as really funny and ridiculous, but also in the same message, it just looks really beautiful and cool. It's really graceful. This is a picture of their EP cover from a few years ago, which is really beautiful, designed by Sam Kickler. The significance of their use of the symbol for music that feels wonderfully organic, and if anybody has listened, go and listen to it. Wonderfully organic and yet digital, a blend that's been described as hyperfolk, obviously goes further than their semantic associations with it. I asked them about how people find them online, especially when typing the @ symbol plus band, if we use our previous reference, just comes up with band or fam. And they said, honestly, we get a lot of comments about not being searchable, and I do think that was a problem, especially as they started out. I believe, though, that most people these days aren't Googling the bands they're into. They're finding out about them on social media, where a lot of the time there are links leading the listener directly to whatever music they found. So this speaks to a lack of functionality in the ad sign, especially in the band's attempts to how to directly market themselves to their audience. They recall another anecdote where fans come up to them after a set to express surprise at their presence. The band's billing on the flyer is hidden beneath this discretion, to borrow Jury's phrase, of their name. They go on to say that they're considering billing themselves as at T, the at sign followed by a T to better their chances of being seen, which is a funny tautology. This ridiculous they speak about is funny though, and that can't be underestimated. A quick glance to the at sign's Wikipedia page, if you can find it, contains the odd anecdote that in 2012, Petra Hana attempted to trademark the symbol, presumably in a canny attempt to monetize the contemporary ubiquity of its usage. In 2017, unfortunately for her, the trademark was cancelled. The other side, I don't know whose this is, so but yeah, not sure that's significant anyway. The other side of the story to ad success is that it might have become too popular for its own good. I don't know how to say this, address munging, which is the process of removing a physical at symbol when you're writing online, is said to decrease your chances of getting caught by a phishing scam. Are we getting to the point where we should remove or avoid the at sign in order to avoid being contacted, to avoid being tagged? I thought we'd end on a contemporary usage of the symbol that feels particularly relevant to the spread of information in the digital age, and one that gives space, although in a last-ditch manner, for the at symbol to be a force for decentralized community organization. In my Instagram feed, at least, in the past year especially, I have seen the increasing usage of the at symbol among other characters as an attempt to avoid certain words being caught within the algorithmic sensors that decide which content to promote. Here, in a perfect example, a user replaces both A's in the word shadow banned to attempt to better her chances of the content calls for racial, social, climate justice across the world to reach her followers. The important content she produces and distributes, she is determined, has not reached her audiences as successfully as she expects it should. She recommends followers engage more and take an active role in supporting the distribution of her reported work. In a funny way, the at symbol hasn't changed. If we bring up the example from 1536, Captain Vastal Libraries, this is the one that James Moseley, kind of Professor Frudius de Billet, was said to have come up with and found in 3000. This is the word reading Amen. The usage is remarkably similar, the substitute for A. The at supplemented for the A, drawing attention to the character on the right and making the word hide on the left. So there's a funny dissonance there between those two things. These two examples, 700 years apart, use the at symbol in similar ways, and crucially both reveal that stickiness, that slipperiness, that difficulty. To sum up, I guess I'm interested in the behavioral relationships to typefaces that we all have. Their semantic power, their potency in the world, and the public imagination is massive. When we see these characters, we're seeing more than just the physical shape. We're getting a little bit of its design legacy, its power in the world, its meaning to individual people. To return to the opening gambit of this talk, is the at side a victim of its own success? We might pose a final question, and again, sorry, this survey question. As final propagation, if we feel type, if like type is semantic, we feel type. Is there a word where type itself can feel? Can the at sign even be a victim? And I don't know the answer to that question. But yeah, thanks so much.
Thanks so much for that. That was fantastic. Does anyone have any questions or anything like that? I was fascinated to find out that the at symbol dates back to the 1500s.
Yeah. It's a good stuff. It's good knowledge.
And it represents Amen.
Well, it's the A in that word. So that refers back to that kind of flourish idea of there being space around the A. Looking through the rest of that book, there are loads of other kind of uses of the A, but it's not always the at symbol, which is interesting. But yeah, it's good.
There you go.
You know what? I was like, I should have made the at very big. That would have been funny, but no, I was about to, because no, unfortunately, they are different typefaces, so that's the difference. But yeah. Thanks so much, guys.